Welcome back to the Layman's Law School, where two hillbilly lawyers sit around and talk about the issues of the day and try to explain the law to the layman out there. I'm here, joined as always by my illustrious, great, and powerful co-host, Reid Sanders. And today we're going to be talking about some stuff in the news. We're going to do, what is it called?
Today in Politics with
Reid Sanders. That's right.
That is really the most important.
That's the feature.
That's the feature. We save that.
Right.
Because listen, I bring the hard-hitting news.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about somebody that we've been talking about for quite some time. We're going to talk about Donald Trump.
Okay.
And
that's not a divisive topic.
No.
It should be fine.
No, I mean, I have some areas that are really important to me that I want to talk about that are around that.
Okay.
And we're also going to talk about the current president of the United States. And
some would say the current president is Donald Trump, but
yes.
And that's it for another day.
That's right. And before we get into this heady stuff and possibly say some really offensive things to one half or the other of the population out there, let's celebrate the week.
Yes. Speaking of heady, this is what you call a Bud Light. This is the bottle instead of the can. It's got a little extra hop, a little extra head on her. It's real classy.
Classy. This is the classy.
Reeks of class.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that bubbling down?
Yeah.
I mean, in the first sip, just already you feel like it's the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reminds me of bad choices.
Speaking of bad choices.
Yeah. Trump decided to take home some of his work after leaving the White House. And Reid, have you been paying attention to any of this stuff?
I've had a couple trials to get prepared for, so no. And I generally, most people assume that lawyers always are, die hard into politics. I am not one of those guys, so you're going to have to catch me up on it. I know the bare bones, but not the outline of what has happened.
Right. Yeah, I am one of those people that sort of stays up on politics. It's what I listen to lull me to sleep at night. It's like a lullaby. Listening to people argue about politics.
It's like women who listen to serial killers.
Right.
You listen to politics.
It's
the same thing.
Right. It makes me feel good. I'm like, I'm better than all these folks.
Right. Sure.
These are, God, look what they've done. Well, I'm going to read it sort of, and just to give everybody a timeline, because I'm not real sure anybody's got a real clear picture. Everybody knows that he got raided.
Sure.
Everybody doesn't know about like what happened in leading up to this. So, January 20th, 2021, Trump leaves the White House about 4 hours before Joe Biden is sworn in, and he's got dozens of boxes containing documents, mementos, and other materials, and he's taken them having them taken to his post-presidential home in Mar-a-Lago. Now, there's a couple of organizations that are in charge of keeping these documents for a variety of reasons, but it's called, basically here in Washington, D.C., it's the National Archives. And they had ongoing communications with Trump about these documents and what was contained in them and where they are, how they're being housed, and these missing records over the course of the entire year of 2021. But in January of 2022, the FBI get basically a grand jury to actually issue a warrant and a subpoena for some of these boxes, at least 15 of the boxes that are contained at Mar-a-Lago. And they go to Mar-a-Lago to actually get these documents. In spring of 2022, they start to investigate and interview some of the Trump aides that helped take some of these documents out. And in right around early June, they start inquiring about some additional documents that they think might be in the Mar-a-Lago still after these 15 boxes were originally taken. A letter sometime in June was written by Trump's lawyers explaining that there were no more sort of top secret documents or classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. It appears that the DOJ has communication with somebody on the inside and had a reason to believe that was not the case. And after that, the DOJ actually got a warrant issued by a federal judge, an independent federal judge. I don't have his name. And the FBI went down and actually executed, here it is, Judge Bruce Reinhart. This is what happens is basically the FBI agents or the person with personal knowledge actually filled out an affidavit. An affidavit is a statement under oath in writing signed by the person doing it. It's under penalty of perjury. The judge issues the warrant based on that, and the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago for more than 9 hours to find 20 some odd boxes of classified documents and other presidential records, some of which are marked as top secret compartmentalized information. And the importance of that designation is it basically means that you can have top secret clearance.
Right.
But unless you need to know that information, you cannot see it. So you could be a 4-star general, but if it is not necessary, even with top secret clearance, if it's not necessary for you to have that information to do what you're supposed to do, you are not allowed to see it. The people that make decisions on this actually meet below the Capitol building. They walk through a 6-foot steel wall or steel door in order to get in there. They are removed of all electronic devices, watches, phones, everything. Every time they come in and every time they go out, they have to pick all this. This is the type of security that is surrounds these documents. And so this is what this whole entire sort of raid is about.
Right.
And in order to get a warrant like this, you have to have a belief that a crime has been committed. Sure. And in this case, it is the Espionage Act. It's a very old law, and it basically is there to prevent spying, and it actually requires that these documents basically be turned over, or somehow actually protected. I'm just going to read some of these statutes to you. So, and it carries a pretty long and hefty fine. So it was initially enacted to combat spying. It carries a penalty of fine and up to 10 years in prison for both mishandling of defense information. And it was the first statute that was mentioned on the warrant was 18 U.S.C. 73-2071 and 1519. And basically all physical documents and records constituting evidence, contraband, fruits of a crime, or other illegally possessed in violation of that statute. It refers to the Espionage Act and states that whoever being entrusted or having lawful possession or control of these documents in writings, code books, signal books, sketches, photographs, so on, through gross negligence permits the same to be removed from its proper place in custody or delivered to anyone else in violation of this trust, or lost or stolen, abstracted or destroyed, and it adds, or having knowledge of the same has been illegally removed from the proper place, shall be fined and imprisoned under this statute. And
that's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
it is. A lot to unpack there.
It is.
The first thing, I mean, when you're talking about a statute, the first thing that pops out, not even, and we'll back this up, but it's gross negligence. Gross negligence is not normal negligence. Gross negligence is a higher level, and that's gross negligence, as you know, in our field is difficult to show.
Sure,
it's very difficult to show because you have to show. It's right below. Would you say it's right below willful and wanton conduct?
Yeah, and almost intentional. Yeah.
It's right. It's very close to that. So when you're trying to show intent in anything, it's difficult to prove.
Sure,
very
yeah.
Difficult to
and
prove.
The way that it helps me to understand it sometimes is if you say the kind of behavior that you engaged in, it's negligent if it could happen. In other words, like if you have these dangerous or important documents and you leave them in the back of your trunk, somebody could get them,
right?
And somebody could have access to them, and then that's not a good place to keep them. If you took them to a train station or a bus station and just put them in a cardboard box and then left them there, okay, the chances of those things being exposed and someone seeing it and someone getting it, it's almost certain.
Right.
If you just leave it out there. If you put it in the back of your trunk, that's regular. You're not supposed. That's not a good place. You do it right.
I'll give you another hypothetical and make it real simple to a car accident. And that's why it's called an accident. Just because it's an accident doesn't mean you're not at fault. It was an accident, but that's negligence. You weren't paying attention. You're following the rules of the road. You're not keeping a safe lookout. Whatever it is, you can't stop on time and you hit somebody from the back. That is negligent. If you are driving 120 and on a 35-mile-per-hour road, that is gross negligence.
Right.
If you're driving that fast, that
something's going to happen.
know that something bad can happen, and you're essentially you're creating that situation.
Yeah, so. yeah, absolutely.
The tie's coming on.
Yeah, sorry.
Here we go.
Yeah, I forgot that Reid's told me that people pay attention more when we're more casual.
Yeah.
I had a little court today, so I had to come in with a tie.
Happens. Well, let me ask you this, Chace, about this whole situation. So obviously, this takes an affidavit to get a warrant issued. I have heard rumblings that there is an affidavit coming out. Now, what is supposed to be in that affidavit? Do we have any knowledge of that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what's being alleged to actually be in the affidavit is sort of what we know. Is basically we think that the Justice Department actually has someone on the inside that works in the either is a Secret Service agent or an FBI agent working at Mar-a-Lago, and is giving information. And so the DOJ is a little bit hesitant to have this released without it being at least redacted. But I think
they're going to be redacted beyond belief. So, but that is very important to me, is because that is the driving force. So it's kind of like a summary judgment motion.
Sure.
If you have an affidavit, it's looked at in the most favorable light to the moving party. An affidavit can solve a lot of those issues. But in this situation, I want to see what's in the affidavit because that is essentially what's alleged to be there.
Right.
And if that person isn't an upstanding person or a person that is a liar,
right,
then this whole thing is a farce.
Right.
Now, the opposite can be said of that too. If this person is very trustworthy and has actual real knowledge
of all this,
then you have to act on it. But it's a very strange situation when you have a past president that's being investigated. And to me, and I might be way off the mark here, but this smells of political crap.
Political motivation.
Political motivation. It just smells of that to me.
I agree with you, and I disagree with you a little bit.
Sure.
I don't put it past the FBI. They don't have the best track record in this country for not being political. You know, was under Richard Nixon, the presidents were scared of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover was a very, very powerful man. I mean, and you want to talk about whether or not they, dipped their toe into politics. I mean, they at one point denied, and whether there's corruption involved, they denied the existence of the mob. They shielded the Ku Klux Klan in the 60s from investigation. Even recently we have some major problems in that. For instance, like when Trump was being investigated for the Russian collusion, part of the wiretapping that occurred, was based on a FISA court. Basically, it's a court that oversees foreign intelligence type warrants, right? To tap his phones, the FBI falsified email exchanges that was part of the basis for the actual warrant that let them listen to this. And so in that situation, if they're willing to falsify documents to achieve a political end or have a goal to actually tap into his phone, that's a legitimate concern. Now, the FBI did a bunch of different corrective actions, but it didn't help out that the text messages between Comey, McCabe, I think his name is Strunk, and one of the attorneys, Page, for the FBI, them talking about Trump. And, this is going to be a disaster if he gets elected. And, we're going to have to act as an insurance policy to keep everything under control. It was obvious that they were unhappy about him being elected. And then the FBI, was pretty hard on Trump through a good bit of his initial, presidency. And so it's, it's pretty clear that these people are FBI agents, but they are also human beings. And what you also have to remember is that apparently this country is split right down the middle.
Yeah.
And so any institution is very likely there's at least some significant level of mixing of those political ends and goals.
And that kind of, we've talked about this a lot, and how one thing that I love about the profession of law is that we can have a battle in the courtroom and still be friends outside, and that how our country is so divided. And what scares me about this whole situation, obviously you want it to be done in a way and be on the up and up. And if something's done wrong, you want the person investigated and brought to justice.
Sure.
What worries me about this entire situation is I don't trust the government at all. I don't trust the FBI at all. And if this is done for a political show, then you're just creating more divide.
Right.
Whether you bring out something that is, it doesn't really matter what the result is. We talked about this in the Johnny Depp trial. Public opinion rules. So let's say they find something and you got to prove gross negligence. They can't prove gross negligence. Now we're even more divided. Now it's more mistrust of the government, and it's more mistrust of the Democrats versus Republicans, and it just creates more and more and more. And I don't see a good way that this ends.
Right.
I don't know. You tell me, do you see a positive in any way that this is ending?
Yeah, I do. I think Merrick Garland has the reason it took from January 2021 to actually August or June of 2022 is because I think he learned a little bit from the lessons of the FBI, the mistakes they made in the wiretapping issues, right? And so they took a lot of steps, writing letters, meeting independently prior to, getting subpoenas from a grand jury to get these documents. And they had some legitimate other concerns. For instance, Trump, they had knowledge, apparently, that these documents related to nuclear weapons, that they had taken them, and that those documents hadn't been returned. And then it was only after a lawyer basically said, look, there's no more classified information here at Mar-a-Lago, that they actually issued the warrant and actually went in there and searched for themselves, because they just basically said, okay, we've complied, we turned over everything, there's nothing else here. They still believe that there was, probably from the person on the inside. And the other concern was that Mar-a-Lago did not have proper security. So when they came in initially and got the first 15 boxes, they said, where are you storing this information? Well, they found out there was more information, memorabilia, whatever, in these other rooms. They said, we need better security in this area. This is not going to do it. Okay. And they did do it. And so, in addition to that, we had a woman that was a Chinese national that got arrested with a lot of, terabyte hard drives at Mar-a-Lago. She was in areas she wasn't supposed to be in, multiple laptops, multiple passports, and she went to jail. It was on some sort of small charge or whatever.
Right.
But that doesn't look good. Now there's apparently surveillance video of a prime minister, I'm not sure of what country, I just read this a few minutes ago, actually looking at documents at Mar-a-Lago, and they're using the flash on their phone in a lighted room, which is odd to me. Okay, why would you do that? Oh. Number one, and or is it a flash on a video and you're actually recording what's actually being in these it's in these documents as you're doing it. So I think that the lack of security, the fact that they have knowledge or ideas that there might be some defense information included in here, or included in the records that he's holding, is a legitimate concern that I want the DOJ and the FBI, corrupt or not, to look into, because if it's affecting national security, it affects me, affects you.
Right.
I don't care if it's Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. I don't care who's doing it.
Right.
Get them.
Well, let me ask you, Chace. And so there's been allegations when Trump was running for president and Hillary Clinton was running for president, that she had documents. Right. Why wouldn't that situation evolve into the situation we have today?
It's a little bit different in that her stuff was all electronic, and that she went through a whole bunch of channels to actually, like, legitimate channels within the government to ask how this should be set up. And had basically had it so that she could, access these secure documents from her home.
Right.
And there's a ton of fishy stuff about the way in which that stuff is handled. And that's something else I want to make clear. People have watched, like, the Game of Thrones, and they see, like, all the political intrigue or whatever. All right, and in any game, let's just say football, NASCAR, Rubbin's Racing.
Yeah.
Okay. If you are engaged in a high level of sport or human endeavor, there is going to be cheating, misconduct involved. Because this is
for you.
This is power we're talking about.
The NFL and the Patriots.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
The Patriots have been the best franchise in our lifetime.
Sure.
They've been a dynasty. And it's hard to be a dynasty in the NFL because things turn over, all over the place.
Draft is set up, to thwart that.
To make to try to make parity exist.
Exactly.
Belichick has been caught numerous times filming other people's practices, not him personally, but people in the organization.
Sure.
Because they're trying to gain a competitive advantage.
Sure.
And so, from what I'm hearing and from what I know, it's really, to me, it's not a Trump issue. More as it's a, hey, even we don't even care if Trump has them because he's already seen them. We can't allow this to be anybody else to see them. And if it's kind of being kept in a laissez-faire manner, then that's a problem. Because I can come chum up to Trump and play some golf and then sneak into a room and take some pictures. And I know that sounds like a movie. But it's not. It happens every day in this world, and all these other countries want to know what we have, where we have it, and an attack can be done. I mean, there's just a multitude of problems that can happen.
And that was one of my initial worries about Trump is just like he is a sophisticated businessman, but I'm not sure he's a sophisticated political actor. And some of the conduct that he engaged in, allowing certain high-level members of the Soviet Union into the Oval Office, and we're talking about people that had careers as spies into the United States, Oval Office.
Sure.
Some questionable conduct and decision. Now, I want to have a good relationship with Russia. I want to have a good relationship with China, just like anybody else. But we are, like I said, competing in a high-stakes game, the highest one there is. And if you don't think that there's people, if you don't think there's rubbing going on in this race,
and we're in a especially right now in a time of the woke environment, and where we want to treat everybody absolutely equal, and I agree with that. But that's not worldwide.
No,
these people will lie, cheat, and steal to beat you. And so we're trying to have parity, like the NFL, the same thing. But there's other countries who are going to lie, cheat, and steal to gain an advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's the ultimate for sophisticated folks that are actually principled when they're engaged in any sort of like competition, and they know that the other side is going to cheat. And it really matters who wins.
Right.
And the only way to win is to cheat yourself. Does that make that person immoral? Does it make that person wrong?
Right.
Okay. Because the end justify the means. It's an argument.
Right.
But
it depends on how you view
exactly.
morals.
It's a hard moral quandary or whatever. But to think that everybody is just acting in
good faith.
Yeah, exactly, and is just living, being their best self.
Right.
In this environment is not good. But I will say this: one of the other issues that Trump's got to deal with, and this is something that went throughout his presidency, it's a weird quirk of his, is he was careless with presidential briefings, other documents, especially if he didn't like a report that he was given.
Right. He
would tear it up and throw it in the toilet, and apparently he was clogging the White House toilet with documents. And there's a Presidential Records Act that basically says you can't do that. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act basically says the destruction or alteration or falsification of records. If you mutilate it, do anything, conceal it, whatever, you can be charged with a crime. And that's another one of the crimes that was cited in this warrant. And it just seems to me it was not. I don't think it's like a Trump is like actively like tearing up documents, put them in the toilet because he's thinking somebody's going to get caught with this or anything like that.
Right.
It's just he dealt with that. He's dealt with a chart on a building that he was building a long time ago, and he didn't like it, and he tore it up. And it's just this sort of his nature.
And I think that gives cause to divisiveness in that it is one of those situations where you go, well, these other presidents took all these documents home, and it looks like a witch hunt, and it may not be a witch hunt, but that's it to the public and the way that the news outlets are reporting it, depending on which one you look at. It's so divisive, and instead of getting the truth of this isn't a witch hunt for Trump, this is a witch hunt to get the documents so nobody else can get them.
Sure.
But that's not the way the news reports it. The news reports it as it's Trump versus Biden, essentially.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's really not what's going on, in my opinion.
No, it's really difficult with our current media. I'm so frustrated about it because, like, for instance, I saw on Fox News, it's not my favorite outlet, okay, but both sides are now doing it, where
Absolutely.
they appeal to most sensational type part of the story.
Right.
And I saw, this is on the news.
Right.
They published a picture, and I have it. I don't know if you can put it up there, but the judge, the impartial judge, in this case, basically what they did was someone had photoshopped a picture of him with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Okay.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
Thing, yeah. Yeah. And with a bottle of whiskey and some chips or whatever on this flight when she's half dressed, right? It looks like she's on this plane. They're headed to the island, right? And they put it up there. And they go, now this is out there. They got people in pictures of, we don't know if this is true or not. Right. They know exactly. They know it's obvious, right? But they're doing anything they can to sort of undercut the value. And that's the real problem to me because, the law really does mean something to me. I really didn't think I was going to be too into it when I went to law school. And I just got more and more, because the law to me is the basic.
The regulation of how we live.
Yeah, it's like if you want to know what a country believes or a people believes, at the base level, we can disagree about which person's God. Right. But we don't disagree typically, especially not in this country, about what is required to live civilly amongst one another. What is justice?
And I've said it a thousand times, and I'll say it 1,000 more. The law is the minimum standard.
That's right.
And so at least when you go into a country, any country, and you read the laws, that's the minimum. That's right. That's the base level you have to act at. If you act below that, you're not allowed.
Right.
And so you're expected in a social setting to act above that. But legally, you at least have to meet this minimum standard.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's even deeper than that to me, in that it's not only the laws that are actually written, it's just the way in which they're applied and the institutions that apply them. And the biggest thing that has been harmed in this whole thing is the way in which the media, and unfortunately the one that's done it the most is Donald Trump, attacks our institutions. Because I think part of what makes this country great and what makes people want to come do business here is because they know that they can come here, open up a business, and if things don't go right because someone committed fraud against them, somebody committed a crime, they can go to our court system. They can go to our police departments, our FBI, and they can get justice, right? There's a system for it, right? And if you start tearing down and taking apart our institutions anytime that they have some sort of legitimate inquiry into you, and in this case, it looks like there's a pretty legitimate inquiry. If they have nuclear documents stored in the basement of a golf course that are material to our national defense. Yeah, that's something that should be investigated.
That's the problem to me, Chace. It's the cry wolf. And so in our society, we've reached that point where it's like, listen, I've heard this so many times, and then when it actually is true, you go, I've been misinformed by the news media so many times. Right. I'm not listening to it. So you don't know what's true and what's not. That's the whole issue with what we are dealing with in our world. I mean, what is real news and what's not? You have Photoshop, you have deep fakes of people, and people believe it. People absolutely believe it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And unfortunately, and this is part of it, there's a certain percentage, 20%, intellectually have an IQ that basically state that you are a detriment to every single endeavor that you're engaged in. That's why you can't get into the military. The military doesn't. Yeah,
70?
No, it's 84, 85, somewhere around that, because they know that you're basically going to cause a problem. Well, these people can and probably should be able to vote, right? Well, they do have limitations in their ability to actually process. Part of the reason why we have attorneys, right? Because sophisticated individuals can manipulate others.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it's there.
You did it to me earlier today.
Well, what's funny to me about this, and what Trump does quite a bit, unfortunately, is he moves goalposts when it comes to these things. So initially it was they planted documents. Well, we have pictures of him removing the documents and taking them actually to Mar-a-Lago. And then we have all these subpoenas that show that those documents are there. And affidavits showing the documents are there. There's surveillance footage of them pulling these documents out, going in empty-handed, that's apparently going to be released soon. So then he says, oh, well, I had a standing order that I declassified them as soon as, I left. If they left the Oval Office, they're declassified. The problem with that is if it relates to nuclear weapons, it cannot be declassified in that manner. There's a different process that has to occur. And typically having some sort of standing order doesn't work like that. But one of the things that he did that really, what they call made a rod for his own back, was in his initial presidential sort of campaign, he talked about how no one was going to be above the law and that he would enforce the rules about classified information. And he made what he did, or what is alleged that he's done, a felony.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I don't know if you have that footage.
You've kind of, you set your own trap, so to speak.
Yep.
On political corruption, we are going to restore honor to our government. In my administration, I'm going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information. No one will be above the law.
All right, yeah. So
that's a bad look.
Well, yeah, just like I said, a rod for his own back. He took it from an actual misdemeanor for that violation to make it a felony, which would make him ineligible for re-election. So the other thing is he's also got a issue in the state of New York where it's alleged that the Trump Foundation is actually falsifying what is being alleged is that he would deflate the value of his actual holdings during tax season in order to avoid taxes, and then when he would apply for bank loans, he would inflate it so that he could get the loan. And his financial advisor just pled guilty to 15 different charges.
That's a problem.
The one that's related to that. But what's interesting is that he had his deposition taken recently, and he pled the fifth.
I didn't know this.
And there is another. There's another video that's pretty telling.
On point.
He's been known for a gaffe or two.
I have seen this one. This is good.
When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth so they're not prosecuted, when you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. Fifth Amendment, Bob. The mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Fifth Amendment, horrible. Horrible. He pleaded the Fifth, and that was the end. We never heard about him again. This is like Watergate, only it's worse. Because here, our foreign enemies were in a position to hack our most sensitive national security.
So, I played that for a variety of reasons. When I was talking about he's attacking some of our most fundamental institutions, this is what I'm talking about. So, yes, I understand the implication that, if you're pleading the Fifth and you worry that that particular amendment is there to protect people that are not sophisticated, that don't understand and can't determine whether or not what they're going to say is going to get them in trouble.
Right.
Okay, they don't know the law, and it's there so that their lawyers can explain to them this is going to be in your best interest not to talk about this, because the person you're talking to is going to be able to weasel out of you things that might mischaracterize your actual testimony and confuse you and cause you problems and actually get you convicted.
Right.
And because of that, we have this right. And it's actually part of our institution that you can't use a person's taking the Fifth as evidence of them actually being guilty of the thing being charged. And for him to attack it, incredibly like that, and then hide behind it, whatever, it shows his willingness to, like I said, that's my biggest problem with Trump whatsoever, is his attacking of those types of institutions that are super important to making this country sort of what it is. But we talked about some important things.
Well, I don't think you said this, but he pleaded the Fifth.
Yeah.
On his situation.
That's right.
But it is the clip shows him saying wrong stuff. Pleading the Fifth is not a bad thing to do.
No.
It's like you said, it's there for a reason, and it should be used. And it absolutely does not mean that you're guilty. It absolutely does not.
Right.
So I disagree with what he was saying in the clip, and it kind of backfired on him.
Yeah. Yep. As many things do. But we've talked about the Fifth Amendment. We've talked about the Fourth Amendment, and some important things happen, nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
But we really need to get to the important stuff.
That's true. We got to cut to Reid for the current events. I scour the net, the dark web.
Yeah, I bet.
For important
bet you that's where that comes
political
from.
things that are going on in our world.
Now I'm nervous now.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, we've talked Republican, Democrat, so we've shown some Republican clips. Let's check out our clip and see what we think here.
I'm trying to get everyone else to
So my question is, I don't know what rally it is, whatever. But and too bad Sean's not here. Is it a law that if you're being detained by a police officer without handcuffs that you have to pretend to wear handcuffs? I didn't know. I didn't know if that was a law. I missed.
Gosh, that was embarrassing. Yeah, that was embarrassing. I think this was about I think it was AOC and Representative Omar, and they were protesting the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
But let's not fake the handcuffs. Let's not fake the handcuffs.
That was a particularly obvious Rubbins racing type thing where they tried to hide it, but I mean, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
They wanted the photo op.
Right.
They didn't get the handcuffs.
Right. So there we go. I mean, both sides play the game.
Oh, that
and you know,
yep.
And there's a lot of bad folks on both sides.
Oh my God, it's embarrassing. See, here's the thing: it's like the scary part is that we vote for them to make decisions for us.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a choice.
That was a choice. It was a poor one.
That's not a good one.
Choice.
Well, thank y'all so much for joining us and sticking through this whole thing with us and going over the Trump raid. We will be going over Biden and the 25th Amendment in the next episode.